Welcome to my Best of Beauty 2024 Wrapped. I'm going to be sharing all my favorites of the year, all my fails of the year, and I'm also combining drugstore and high-end. In the past, I've done these as 3 separate videos: best high-end, best drugstore, worst of the year. But today we're combining all of them, just one big beauty extravaganza. I'm gonna start with the best products of the year, and I have both high-end and drugstore mixed in here. And then in the second half of the video is where I'm gonna share the worst products of the year that I think you should definitely skip. Most of these launched this year. There may be a few exceptions, and I don't necessarily have one favorite for every category. I just chose my genuine favorite. So some categories have more than one, some categories don't have a favorite at all. It really just came down to what I tried this year that I really loved that I wanted to share. So starting in foundation, I have 2 foundation favorites to share. One is a predictable one and one is a pretty new favorite. So if you've been watching me throughout 2024, you probably knew I would mention this foundation from Fenty. This is their Soft Lip Foundation. This is a phenomenal product. So I wear mine in the shade 150. It is probably one of the best shade matches I've ever found in a foundation. And this is the kind of sister foundation, shall we say, to their original foundation. So it's a different formula than that one. It is glowy. Prior to this, my holy grail has been the Fenty Eavesdrop, and that is still one of my tip-top favorites. It's been one of my most reached for foundations still throughout 2024. This is similar to that, but a little bit different. So this one has a little bit more of a glow to it, but I wouldn't describe it as a dewy foundation. The glow is still very natural. It's kind of like a satin finish. It still provides that blur similar to the Soft Lip, but I wouldn't say it's quite as blurred as that one because the finish is less matte. You know, it has a little bit of a glow, so inevitably it's gonna be less blurred, but it still looks very perfected. The coverage level can be built up. I would say it sits at like a high-low or a low-medium, but then you could kind of adapt it from there. It wears well, it looks natural. I adore this foundation. It just looks like you have very, very healthy skin. My other favorite is new to me, but it is the Easy Blur from Huda. This reminds me so much of the Eavesdrop that I was just mentioning, that prior to this year, you know, Eavesdrop was definitely a holy grail for me. This is similar to Eavesdrop, but if you bumped the coverage up. It's interesting too because this was really described as a more glowy foundation, but I don't find that to be the case. Granted, I have dry skin, so for both of these, even though they are described as like a dewier finish, I don't find either one of them to be like hyper dewy. You know, I think they sit a little more on the satin side, but that could be because I have dry skin, so keep that in mind. I feel like I haven't worn a full coverage foundation like this in a while, so the first time that I applied it, I was kind of taken back by the coverage because I'm so used to like skin tints that have been so popular the last few years. And part of the reason I strayed away from higher coverage foundations for so long was that they just looked cakey and heavy on the skin. This is one of the few foundations that provides a really high level of coverage but still looks semi-undetectable on the skin. I don't think it's super thick or foundation-y. Like the finish on the skin is pretty comparable to what I get with my lighter coverage foundations, even though it has a higher level of coverage to it. I don't have a new concealer favorite to share. It's the same favorite that I've been loving since last year, the Natasha Denona High Glam concealer that has retained that top spot. Like nothing has come close to that this year. So we're skipping concealer and moving on to powder because I have 2 powder favorites for 2024. Starting with the pink powder from Kosas. This came out this year as an addition to their baked powder line. So previously I had the shade Breezy. I love that out of the baked powders from them. Not pressed powders, they're baked powders. And this year they launched 3 new shades that are all supposed to have kind of a brightening effect. So there's a peach, a yellow, and a pink. The pink is the one designed for fair skin. This is what I wear and I love this product. I have it under my eyes right now. I think of this as kind of like a finishing / brightening powder, though you certainly could use this to set the skin. It's not overly pink. It's not gonna like turn you pink. It just gives a little bit of a glow to the skin because I feel like the pink, especially on the under eyes, the pink can do a little bit of color correcting. It also kind of seamlessly melts in with the blush where everything looks super cohesive, but it's still a very lightweight powder because it is a baked powder, but it also has that really like soft, blurring, velvety texture to it that I loved from the original formula from Kosas. So this was such a standout for me this year. I reach for this quite often. Like if I'm looking at my face and I'm like, something could be off, like some of the colors just aren't working well together, I grab this, just dust it onto the under eye and I'm like, okay, that was it. We fixed it. I also shared a side-by-side on my Instagram comparing half of my face with the new pink one and then half with the skin tone shade that I wear. And you can really see the difference in terms of brightening on my under eye. They're both fantastic products, but I kind of reach for them just for different purposes. The other powder, okay, we have 2 for Huda Beauty. I think so far she's taking the top spot this year. I have 2 favorites from her. We also have the Easy Bake powder. I don't think this comes as any surprise if you have watched maybe like one singular video of me from this year. You probably could have predicted this. Specifically, the Easy Blur in the shade Peach Pie. This was the new shade that launched this year, and I wasn't sure if this shade would really work for me because it's certainly not designed for my skin tone. This is for a medium to tan skin tone to brighten the under eyes. And yet, even on my pale skin, I think this looks beautiful. It doesn't give me a cast or anything. I mean, if I go in light-handed. In 2023 and 2024, I've really been about different tones of powder and kind of playing with them, like pink powders, peach powders, yellow powders, using them to achieve a different look than my translucent powders or even skin tone powders before. This is really fantastic for brightening. And again, I think it also gives that really cohesive look that blends into your blush if you're opting for a peach shade of blush, which I have been for most of 2024. Is that gonna transition us into blush? I was gonna do bronzer next, but I think we need to do blush now because how many blush favorites do I have? I have three blush favorites. And before we even talk specific products, for me, 2024 was all about peach and nude blushes. That's really been my obsession, and you're going to see that reflected a bit in these products. I mean, obviously they come in a range of shades, but the ones that I'm gravitating to out of the line are the peaches and like the nude shades. So we'll start with the most inexpensive, or the least expensive, if you will. It is the blush formula from REM. So I originally had this in 2 shades. I also have the pink, but I did declutter the pink just because I'm not super into that shade anymore. But this shade right here, Peach Planet, is gorgeous. So these are called the Satin Matte Blushes. I love a matte blush, but I don't want it to necessarily be like too powdery flat of a matte. I like that this blush is matte enough that it really blurs out the skin, doesn't emphasize any texture, but it's not too powdery dry where then your cheek looks dry and makeup-y. Like, it sits at that perfect midpoint. It's high pigment. You could definitely build it up, or you could wear it a little more sheared out if you go in with a super light hand. This wears well, and this shade is just so pretty. I like how orangey peachy it is without leaning too like yellowy orange where something looks off. Like, it just looks super natural. I will say I highly considered throwing in the Patrick Ta blush duos, and even as I'm sitting here in this moment, I'm like, did they deserve a spot in my best of the year? It's so tough. I'm trying to be as decisive as I can, and I'm like, okay, Kelly, you already gave it to 3 blushes. We gotta narrow it down a little bit. So we will give Patrick Ta the honorable mention category. I just made that up, but he gets an honorable mention for the blush duos. But these 3 truly were the ones I was reaching for the most this year. So we also have the Hourglass Unreal blushes. So I've got this shade on right now. This is the shade Scene. It's kind of this orangey peachy shade. Wait, that's not true. That's not the shade I have on. I have on the shade Moment. That's an orangey peachy shade. I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, that's not right. The shade Scene is a little bit more of like a rose color, but Moment is the one that I have on. These look so natural on the skin, but they make your cheek just look alive and glowy. Even though they don't have any shimmer particles to them, just the dewy finish of them makes the skin look so radiant without emphasizing texture and pores, which is such a hard balance to find, but I feel like Hourglass really achieved it. The only thing that I don't like about these, and I feel like I want to mention it, the packaging is awful. Hourglass, for this price, this packaging is not working for me. So you have the little dropper, and it just, on a couple of mine, it's hard to get it out, and I feel like I have to really work down there to get the product out. I also think if you have any mobility issues, you might have a hard time because I need to press pretty firm to get the product out. So the packaging is not ideal. In a perfect world, Hourglass would relaunch this with like a squeeze dropper. That would make this like the most perfect blush to ever exist. Even with my qualms with the packaging, it's still a major favorite for me. I'm reaching for these constantly. They're so beautiful. They're easy to work with. If you want to splurge, and it is a splurge, if you want to splurge, the brush that is designed to work with this is my favorite brush for using this. That being said, if you don't use this one, I would recommend any type of blush brush that's small like this. I don't think these work best with like a big blush brush like so. It has to be a little smaller, a little bit more precise. Love, love, love these. My other favorite is your favorite. This was a recommendation from so many subscribers. I have had so many of you rave about this product to me. The RMS ReDimension Hydra Powder Blush. So this is a formula that I kind of think of as a blush topper, though it looks beautiful on its own. You could truly wear it either way, but it has both the pigment and the glow. So that's why I think it works really well as a topper if you choose to use it that way, or it's a slightly more subtle blush. Today I have it on as a topper on top of the orangey Hourglass one that I used. This is another one, much like the Kosas powder. When I'm looking at my face and I'm like, something is still not quite right. What could I do? How can I save it? This is the one I'm reaching for because it adds some life back into the skin, especially as someone who loves powder. I love a matte look. I like using a lot of matte products. Sometimes I can get to the end and be like, oh, this might be too matte even for me. So let's save it, and then I'm reaching in for this. It just brings the glow back to the skin, but it's not overly glowy, and it doesn't emphasize pores. Do you hear pattern here with like my preferences in makeup? I'm like, I want it. I want everything. I want you to do the impossible. I want you to be glowy and not emphasize texture. Best powder bronzer of the year came from the drugstore, the NYX Butter Bronzers. These I've been raving about all year long. This is fantastic. I have to be so careful with mine because it is broken, but these are $10. This is a product that you can use as a multi-use product. It's perfect for traveling if it's not broken like mine because it is a little bit rosy. Like all of the blushes, the bronzers have a little bit of this like rosy quality to them. So in my eyes, they work beautifully as like a blonzer. I always want to just call it a bronzer, which is what it already is. A blonzer, kind of a combo blush and bronzer. But these also have a little bit of a glow to them. Not highlightery, but it has a glow. So you can take just a little bit of this, dust it all over your face, and you've essentially done blush, bronzer, and highlight. Like it just livens up the face, one singular step. It blends like butter, which I know is an overused description, but this truly like, when they named these the butter bronzers, they knew what they were doing. The formula truly is buttery. For cream bronzers, I have two. One is an actual cream bronzer and one is a foundation stick. And let me start with the foundation stick because this has been a recent favorite for me that I have not stopped using. So this is from the brand Well People. They launched this foundation stick a few months back, and as a foundation, I do not like it. I don't recommend this for a foundation stick. That being said, I don't think I'm the target audience for a foundation stick. Just as an aside, I have never found one that I really like that much. Like I found some that I can make work, but that has never been my preference for a type of like a finish or a formula. As a bronzing stick, this is one of the best I have ever found. Okay, so I wear mine in the shade 28 Medium Neutral, which is just a few shades deeper than the foundation shade that I wear in this. And I think that's why this works so well because it looks super natural. It's not too orangey warm of a bronzer, though it is warmer than the other bronzer I'm gonna share in a minute. It just looks like sun and it blends out so effortlessly. It's very creamy, but it's not too emollient to the point that you almost lose control of the product and it's over blending. It's a phenomenal formula. My other favorite is a true bronzer stick, and it is from Makeup by Mario. It is their SoftSculpt shaping stick. This did not launch this year, but this shade launched this year. So they expanded the shade, the range with a few new shades, and they now offer an even lighter one than they had originally. And that is why I love this. This is in the shade Fair, and it is one of the lightest cream bronzers that I have found. So if you have pale skin and you feel like a lot of cream bronzers just look too orange or too deep, I recommend this one. This, like, again, one of the lightest I found. I want to go ahead and share swatches of this next to the foundation stick that I use as a cream bronzer. So you can see there's a huge difference in the undertone, but the depth is pretty similar. So the Makeup by Mario, very, very neutral. The Well People one, even though it is described as a neutral, compared to this one, it's obviously pulling much warmer. So this I feel like gives me a nice like tanned look. This gives me a little bit of a tanned look, but a very sculpted look. You could even use this as a contour, this being the Makeup by Mario one. It's funny too, because when I got this, I gave the next shade to my roommate. So I wear Fair and she has light. And I just saw it in her room the other day and I'm like, what do you think of that? Did you end up liking it? And she was like, oh, I love it. I use it as a contour. I didn't have any highlighter favorites this year, but if you know me, that probably does not come as any surprise, but I am slowly but surely dipping my toes back into highlighter. So maybe 2025 will be the year that I'm raving about some highlighters. But for eyeshadow, I only have one. Okay, I will say for most of the year, the only eyeshadow that I was wearing was like a one and done look using the Solo shadows from Merit. That's what I was using for the most part. But a somewhat newer favorite for me that I have been reaching for so consistently since I bought them, the e.l.f. Fine as Fleck eyeshadows. So I picked up two of them, and this shade in particular has been the one that I cannot put down. It is called White Hot, and I have it on the inner maybe third of my lid today. It is like a beautiful, scattered, sparkly shadow. These were launched clearly to attempt to dupe the Urban Decay Moondust shadows, and I've spoken in my other reviews that these are not Moondust dupes. So if you're going into this looking for the exact same product, you'll probably be disappointed. But as a single shadow, you know, if you can get the idea of the moon dust shadows out of your head and you just think of this as a beautiful sparkly shadow, it's phenomenal. The main difference between this and moon dust is just the size of the glitter flecks. The glitter flecks in this just are smaller and more refined, so they don't look quite as like chunky scattered as the moon dust shadows can. But this is so beautiful. I love it on my inner corner. I like taking this with a very fluffy brush and tapping a lot of it off the brush so I don't get any fallout or anything, and just like haphazardly throwing it on the inner corner. It just looks so fun every single time. I prefer this formula with a brush because it gives more of a scattered look, but if you want a little bit more of a metallic look, you can get that with your finger. I feel like it applies differently depending on the application. So if you want it more sparkly scattered, use a brush. Two mascara favorites. One that I don't have at the moment, but I obviously have to give a shout out to the mascara that I feel like I've been talking about all year over and over again, the Lash Extender from e.l.f. Such a phenomenal mascara. It is a tubing formula, and the brown shade in particular is such a beautiful brown. It's a little bit on the more chocolate brown side. It's not as quite as like milk chocolatey brown as I seem to be endlessly hunting for. I have yet to find a milk chocolate brown mascara that's like quite the shade I want, but I also am starting to wonder if maybe what I want is unrealistic and impossible. But anyways, we're talking about chocolate descriptions. If you're looking for a dark chocolate, that one is the perfect shade for that. It gives really fantastic length, great tubing formula, so naturally you're not going to get any smudging or flaking. It comes off easily in the tubes. I feel like I have to call that out because a lot of mascaras that call themselves tubing formulas don't actually tube, and I'm like, that's the whole point. If these aren't coming off in tubes, it's not a tubing mascara. The e.l.f. one, phenomenal tubes. But another favorite for me is one that was a favorite in the past, but they launched a brown, I believe this year, and I've been in love with it. It is the New Heights mascara from Ulta Beauty. So this is the one that I have on right now. It's not a tubing formula, but it is a phenomenal mascara, and I really don't get much like smudging or flaking, even though it's not tubing or waterproof. It's a really pretty brown. It's a lighter brown than the e.l.f. one. It's a very neutral shade of brown as well, and this is great for lengthening. This formula and wand is so similar to the Item Beauty mascara. If you remember that brand, Addison Rae's brand that was at Sephora but has since closed down. If you liked that mascara, and unfortunately, you know, we can't get it anymore because it doesn't exist anymore, try this. It's such a good dupe. Okay, I feel like I'm cruising right along, and now it's time for my favorite category, lip liners. Or is my favorite category powders? I don't know. They sit neck and neck, but I have a drugstore favorite and a high-end favorite. My drugstore comes from CoverGirl. The Outlast lip stains are phenomenal lip liner pens. So this is not necessarily designed just to be a lip liner, but that's the purpose that I'm recommending it for. It works fine all over the lips, but I think these shine as lip liners. I have I think 4 of these. I love all of them. The one I probably wear the most is Sugi Girl. This was one that I brought on my trip. For my birthday, I went to Paris and Amsterdam, and I really didn't wear makeup on my trip. I just did like a tinted sunscreen, some brow gel. But this was one I would do every single day, just kind of like outline my lips and then take my finger and smudge it out. And because this shade is almost the exact same color as my lip line, I feel like it gave me some definition. And then when you smudge it out, you get that beautiful natural blurred look. You can throw a lip gloss on the top if you want, but it's so natural, it wears well. Or I like to take this under my other lip. So if I'm like, let's say I'm going to dinner or like something where there's a high likelihood my lip product is gonna wear away. I'm like eating pasta or something that has like oil on it. This is the secret. You start with this, let it set, and then do your lip liner lipstick over top. So then when things start to fade away, you have this behind it to extend the longevity there. I love a lip stain for that purpose. I've really been into lip stains for the last few years, and this for a lip liner stain is fantastic. I also have a high-end lip liner favorite. It comes from Saie. These are great. These are so creamy, but they're still stiff enough. I feel like I'm Goldilocks with all these products. I'm like, I want my lip liner to be creamy, but not too creamy. I want my powder blush to be glowy, but not too glowy, but emphasizes texture. Like, I'm looking for the impossible here, but I feel like Saie achieved that. It's hard to find that balance with a lip liner, and I feel like they really nailed it with this. The longevity is there. I love the shades they chose. I hope they expand into even more fun shades. Fun, in air quotes, these are fun. I like these shades, but They're all quite neutral, and I wonder if next year they'll give us maybe some reds, or actually, as I was in the middle of saying that, knowing Saie as a brand and like their brand identity, I don't think that they will. But anyways, these are great. I love them. I reach for them often, but especially the shade Flirt. This is the like My Lips But Better shade. It's a little bit, well, it's not my exact lip shade. It's a few shades deeper, but I think it looks so beautiful, especially if you like to do a multi-layer lip liner look. So you start with this, you put a darker one over top. The darker one that I like to use is Tease. You get that ombre effect. I just love these. Okay, perfume. I have two favorites, one drugstore, one high-end. We'll start with the drugstore one. So I love the brand Finery. If you are not familiar with this brand, they're sold at Target, and they make, I'm not gonna say dupes because they're really not exact dupes, but they make similar products to popular fragrances, but they kind of put their own spin on most of them. Like many of them are similar but not identical. This one is identical though. So this is their fragrance Without a Trace. It is identical to Fleur Missing Person, which is one of my favorite perfumes. If you know this scent, you know it's delicious. I'll put the notes for all of these on the screen, but Without a Trace, in my opinion, smells the exact same as Missing Person, but it has better projection and wear time. Like such an easy one for me. I still love both of these. I still wear both. Like you can see a big dip in both of them. Sometimes I'll layer them, no reason, just for fun. I'm like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but they're the same. A newer favorite, but an immediate love, has been You Doux from Glossier. I love their original Glossier perfume, You. I love that one. I wear that one often. This smells fantastic. It's very similar to Te Matcha from Le Labo, if you're familiar with that scent. This is a good, very like gender neutral scent. Obviously all perfume is gender neutral, but I feel like this could be really well loved by anyone. I was actually wearing this the other day with one of my guy friends, and he was like, "What perfume are you wearing?" I told him the name. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go buy that right now." It's delicious. It's soft, creamy. It's a little more of a skin scent. I wouldn't say it has too much projection, but I feel like, you know, that's kind of the intent here. It is phenomenal. If you like You, I wouldn't say this is similar, but it's in the same kind of scent profile where I think if you like You, you will probably like You Doux. But now, let's talk about the bad products from 2024. Not everything can be good, and some of these are very, very bad. I did include a range though. Some are worse than others. Some of them are not the worst products I've ever tried, but I don't think they're worth your money. And I think that's the category this first one sits in. It's the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt. So this one launched this year. I have it in the exact same shade that I have the cream bronzer, and I'll even do a side-by-side comparison so you can see I have them both in the shade Fair. And if you're wondering between these two, I would direct you towards the cream bronzer over the liquid any day. So the liquid is here, the cream is here. The shade is pretty similar, though I would say perhaps the cream is slightly more neutral than the liquid one is, even though they're both the shade Fair. This is just such a sheer product, and to a fault in my opinion. It kind of just blends away into nothing. I have to really layer it up, and it's one of those products that I can make work for sure. Like if you bought this, you could find a way to use it, but I don't think it's a good formula. It's not one I would recommend, especially when the cream bronzer is so much better than this. The texture is also quite liquidy. I mean, it is a liquid bronzer, but I find this liquid bronzer in particular is even less compatible with some of my other foundations and products that I'm layering on top of. I have to be kind of careful, like the order that I put them in, trying to blend them out so they don't disrupt the other products. It has the double purpose packaging is what I'm gonna call it. You have the pump on the top, and then you have the doe foot on the inside, so you could use it as something you swipe on, or they also market this as like their own version of like a bronzer drop. I like this more for the idea of bronzer drops if you just want to put down that base before you put product on top of it, but I really don't like it either way. I wouldn't recommend it. A flop from Drunk Elephant, these sunscreens, these are bad. This is the Umbra Sheer Mineral Cream. They reformulated and relaunched these. I think they could probably go reformulate them again. These are not great sunscreens, but they came out in, what is it? I think it's 4 shades, yeah. Kind of a rosy one. You have the lighter tan and then a deeper tan. It's SPF 30. I would prefer an even higher SPF, but 30 is fine, I guess. But what I don't like about these is the texture. These are thick and they are greasy. Like if you are applying, okay, here's the thing. When I see sunscreen reviews, a lot of times I'm not seeing the person wear enough sunscreen, and then they'll give it a good review and they're like, it sat well, no cast. I'm like, that's because you're not wearing enough. Like if you are wearing enough of this product to get adequate sun protection, your face is gonna look like a grease ball. Anything you layer over top of it is gonna look heavy because it's such a thick formula to begin with. Like The only way these will look nice is if you do not apply enough of them, so I wouldn't get these. In my opinion, most sunscreens are bad. Like, it's rare to find a good sunscreen. My personal favorite is the Beauty of Joseon sunscreen. That one is phenomenal, but a dud that came out this year is one I don't have anymore, so you're gonna have to use your imagination because it looks just like this, but it's not this, okay? But it is the Mineral Unseen Sunscreen from Supergoop. Not to be confused with the original Unseen Sunscreen, which I am holding in my hand right now, so it probably is confusing, but stick with me. The original Unseen Sunscreen is fantastic. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is completely clear, no cast, works, it's beautiful. The new one that they came out with this year is the Mineral Unseen Sunscreen. It is paste. It is thick, dry paste. Even on my pale skin, I had such a cast, I had to immediately wash it off. Like, anytime I've tried to wear this, it gives a cast, clings to my dry patches. Again, it's one of those where if you don't apply enough, you could probably make it blend in, but if you are applying as much as you are recommended to wear, you will get a cast. I'm like, if I'm this pale and I'm getting a cast, I don't know how this could work for anyone, so avoid that at all costs. Not the biggest flop in the world, but I don't recommend it. The Rare Beauty blushes that came out this year. These are their powder blushes. I think these were honestly just kind of misleading in terms of the way that they marketed these. These are pink highlighters. That's what I'll say. If you want a pink highlighter, you might like these, and with that description, I think they work well as a blush topper if you want to use it like that. But as a blush all over the cheek, it's too highlightery in my opinion. All your pores are emphasized, and it even just gives this weird shadow on the face because when you turn, it looks fantastic from the side, but from the front, like, because of how hyper glowy they are, it just doesn't sit right. And I feel like whenever I would see the videos of this when it first came out, I was seeing everyone show it from the side. It looks beautiful from the side, but from the front, it does not, because it's emphasizing all your texture, and because it's so shiny and reflective on like this part of your cheek, it's bringing that forward. It would look unnatural, and it wouldn't like pop your cheek the way you're intending for a glowy blush to do, because it was like too much highlight concentrated in the center. I've barely reached for this since I bought it. I wouldn't recommend it. My most unpopular opinion, but I'm sticking to it, I hate these blushes from Milk Makeup. And they were actually just named the #1 product of the year by Women's Wear Daily. And I was shocked. I saw that and I'm like, you're kidding. Those are one of the worst products of the year, in my opinion. The Milk Makeup Jelly Blushes. They're fine as a lip stain. They're usable if you're willing to read a manual. If you want to wear them on your cheeks, you're gonna have to follow the instructions to a T. But I just don't think this is a great formula considering everything else on the market. I would never direct someone to buying these. They're so hard to blend. You have to work so quickly. And even once I get them blended, they're still always patchy, even if I'm doing everything right. Like, I'm telling you, even if you do everything exactly right, they still don't look as nice as my other blushes that I don't have to do all that with. So I wouldn't recommend these unless you want to make your life harder. Another flop for me is one that I decluttered, but the E.l.f. foundation that launched this year was not my favorite. It's fine. Again, you could certainly make it work, but even at the drugstore, I think there are so many better foundations that I would direct you towards before I would ever recommend the E.l.f. one. I just found the Soft Glam foundation to look heavy on my skin. It had a decent level of coverage to it, but at the cost of looking makeup-y. It also didn't really sit well on my dry skin. Perhaps it would be more loved by someone with oily skin, but there are so many better perfecting and still natural looking foundations at the drugstore that are at the same price or less that I would skip the E.l.f. one. I cannot believe this year is already almost over. It really flew by, but let me know your best and worst of beauty in 2024 down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will go ahead and see you in my next one. Bye.